I thought a scam call was just another minor annoyance, the kind of thing you hang up on and forget. But when the same group rang me for the third time in a single afternoon, something in me snapped. I wasn't just tired, I was insulted. They thought I'd keep playing the role of the victim. They thought I'd roll over like everyone else. They didn't realize I had time, patience, and just enough spite to fight back. That day, I turned their own phones into a weapon against them. I work nights. It's not glamorous, contract cleaning in office buildings, but it pays the bills. The trade-off is that my daytime belongs to sleep. For me, silence isn't a luxury, it's survival. So when my phone started buzzing with those urgent calls about medical insurance, I groaned, rolled over, and tried to ignore it. The first one, I picked up just to shut it down. Caller ID even flagged it as spam likely, but I figured a quick, not interested, take me off your list would do the trick. The man on the line launched into his polished script, words tumbling like they were rolling off a teleprompter. I listened, half curious, half irritated, and when he was finished, I politely told him I wasn't interested. I even reminded him my number was on the National Do Not Call registry. He assured me I'd been removed. We ended with fake civility. Have a good day. You too. I thought that was it. But an hour later, my phone buzzed again. Same scam, same pitch, different voice. My stomach tightened. Maybe it's just a mistake, I told myself. I repeated the same polite script, got the same hollow promise, and hung up. 5 minutes later, another call. Different number. Same scam. Now my fatigue mixed with something sharper. I could feel irritation rising into anger. I'd done everything the right way, registered, requested, repeated myself, and they were still burning through my time. My bed felt less like a refuge and more like a trap, with the phone dragging me back into their game every time my eyelids started to close. By the third call, I wasn't just tired. I was boiling. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Did they think I was helpless? Did they think I'd just keep taking it? I sat up, heart racing, and answered. My tone was different this time. I told the agent flat out. I'd asked twice already, and their scam was pathetic. I told him he should be ashamed for preying on people who didn't know better or who weren't in their right minds. And then I said the words that changed the whole day. Today, I promise you, you're going to regret calling me. The line went dead. He'd hung up, but instead of feeling silenced, I felt a spark of satisfaction. Because what he didn't realize was that I wasn't finished. Far from it. If they wanted to waste my time, I had ways of wasting theirs. I had a phone, a full battery, and hours before my night shift. Little did I know, this was the beginning of a 116-call marathon that would push a spam operation to the edge and finally silence them for good. The third call came when I had just started drifting back to sleep. That half-dreaming state where your body finally loosens its grip on consciousness. Yeah, they shattered it with another ring. I slammed my hand on the nightstand, fumbled for the phone, and when I saw the unfamiliar number, I already knew. Still, I answered. Hello, sir. We're calling about your medical insurance. I cut him off before he could get through the word coverage. My voice came out sharper than I expected, like a blade I'd forgotten I was carrying. Listen, 2 of your colleagues already called me today. I told both of them the same thing. I'm not interested. My number is on the do not call list. So let me be crystal clear, stop calling me. There was a pause, just long enough to hear the background noise of a crowded call center. Chairs scraping, distant chatter, the faint hum of other scams in progress. And then the agent came back with the most disinterested yes, sir, I'd ever heard in my life. That tone, that flat, dismissive tone, like I was just another box to check, made my blood boil. Do you even hear yourself? I snapped. You're stealing time from people who don't know better. Do you realize what you're doing? He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just hung up. For a moment, I stared at the screen, phone buzzing back to the home screen like nothing had happened. They'd cut me off as if my anger didn't matter, as if I were invisible. And that feeling, being dismissed, hit me harder than the calls themselves. I sat there, phone in hand, pulse pounding in my ears. My room felt smaller, darker, as if the walls themselves were closing in with every unanswered question. Was this what they counted on? That people would sigh, complain, maybe file a report online, and then roll over in defeat? Not me. Not today. Something inside me shifted. The exhaustion that had weighed me down all morning hardened into something else, resolve. If they wanted to waste my time, I'd waste theirs. If they wanted to play a numbers game, I'd flip the board. I opened the call log, scrolled to the number that had just flashed across my screen, and hit redial. The line clicked. A new voice, same script. "Hello, sir, we're calling." I didn't let him finish. My voice was calm this time, almost sweet. "Oh, perfect. I was just about to call you." Confusion flickered in his pause. Then I went in for the kill. "Let me tell you exactly what you're doing wrong." I mocked their lines, twisted their words, and watched the seconds tick by as silence turned into anger on the other end. And when they hung up, I hit redial. Call. Rant. Hang up. Redial. Again. And again. With each loop, I felt my exhaustion burn away, replaced by a new kind of energy. Spite. Pure, delicious spite. But that was just the beginning of my nightmare for them. Redial became my new weapon. Every time they hung up, I pressed that green button again. At first, it felt almost childish, like tapping a repeat button just to annoy someone. But soon I realized something. The same handful of agents kept answering. Their voices were easy to recognize. One nasal, one deep with a thick accent, another who spoke way too fast, tripping over the script like he wanted to get it over with. It dawned on me that I wasn't fighting a faceless system. I was circling the same group of people, dragging them back into the ring whether they liked it or not. The first few times, I mocked their lines. "Sir, are you interested in giving away my bank account?" "Oh yes, please, let's get right to the part where you steal from me." Click. They'd hang up. Redial. Another agent. "Hello, sir, we're calling. Do you realize you sound like a broken record? Tell me, do you get paid per scam, or is it just minimum wage to rot your soul?" Click. Each hang-up fueled me. I imagined them shifting uncomfortably in their chairs, the irritation mounting like a storm cloud above their little cubicles. My exhaustion turned into adrenaline, and for the first time all day, I wasn't the victim of the calls. I was the aggressor. But something gnawed at me. It was too easy for them to hang up. If I wanted to really get under their skin, I needed to make it impossible for them to escape. That's when the idea hit me. If they were required to follow scripts, and most of these operations are, I could twist their own structure against them. So on the next call, when an agent chirped through the opening line, I interrupted. "Wait, I have a question about your policy. Can you repeat that slower?" The hesitation on the other end was golden. He stumbled, then restarted, and I cut him off again. "Sorry, didn't catch that. Can you start over?" I dragged him back through the first 30 seconds 3 times before he lost it and cursed under his breath. Click. I laughed out loud in my apartment, the sound echoing against the bare walls. This was more than revenge. This was sport. But I didn't stop there. I asked to speak to supervisors. I asked them to explain terms they'd never heard of. I repeated back their lines with exaggerated mockery until the words sounded alien even to them. With every tactic, I felt myself tightening the screws. But deep down, I knew this couldn't last forever. They'd escalate, or I'd burn out. And part of me wondered, what if they really did find a way to come after me? Still, in that moment, I was locked in, playing cat and mouse with people who had no idea they were the prey now. Then, just when I thought I'd seen the limits of their patience, one of them muttered something in a language I didn't understand and slammed the line shut. That should have been my first red flag, because the real breaking point was still ahead. By the 10th call, I wasn't just repeating a cycle. I was crafting a routine. Call, provoke, hang up, redial. But after a while, pure mockery started to lose its sting. I needed something new, something that would really get under their skin. That's when I decided to bring music into the mix. On the next connection, before the agent could even launch into his opening, I began to sing. Loud, off-key, a verse from whatever popped into my mind. Rock ballads, cheesy jingles, even a bit of Christmas Carol just to keep them guessing. The silence on the other end was priceless. At first they waited, maybe thinking I'd stop. But when I barreled straight through to the chorus, they snapped. "Sir, this is not professional." Click. I laughed, already dialing again. Another pickup. Same tactic. This time I crooned a parody of their script. "We're calling you for coverage, but really it's a scam." The agent shouted something I couldn't understand, his voice breaking with frustration, before hanging up. It hit me then. I was breaking them. The voices were no longer polished and rehearsed. They were ragged, angry, slipping into their native language to spit out curses before cutting the line. And every time they cracked, I felt more certain. These weren't untouchable villains. They were just tired, underpaid grifters who'd stumbled into someone unwilling to play along. But the real confirmation came later that evening. After about 50 calls, I finally caught a slip. One agent, the one with the nasal voice, answered with a sigh so deep I almost felt bad for him. Almost. He didn't even bother with the full script. Just, "Yes, sir, it's insurance. You want it?" His tone dripped with exhaustion. That was the moment I knew I had them. Their masks were gone. They weren't even pretending anymore. I leaned into it. "Insurance? Oh, finally. Yes, yes, I want the deluxe package. Tell me more." His pause stretched long, then broke with a muttered, "I don't have time for this." Click. I sat there staring at my phone, a grin spreading across my face. I'd reduced a scammer, someone who thrived on wasting people's time, to admitting he didn't have time for me. That should have been victory enough. But instead, it fueled me to push harder. Because if I could drag them this low with nothing but singing and sarcasm, what would happen if I demanded something bigger? Something their scripts couldn't dodge? I picked up my phone again, thumb hovering over redial. The thought pulsed in my mind like a drumbeat. Supervisors. They kept insisting there wasn't one, but I knew better. Every scam has a hierarchy, and if I could climb high enough up their ladder, I might just topple the whole rotten tree. So I hit call once more, determined to push past the flimsy front line. I wasn't ready for what I was about to discover. By now, my call log looked like a battlefield, rows and rows of outgoing numbers, all pointing to the same scam hive. I'd crossed the 50-call mark, and yet the stubborn defiance in me said I wasn't nearly done. I wanted the top. The next time someone picked up, I didn't waste breath mocking them. I went straight to it. "Transfer me to your supervisor." Click. Redial. Supervisor. Click. It became my new chant, my mantra. Every agent who answered heard the same demand. Some hung up immediately. Others argued that there was no supervisor, that the calls weren't recorded, that I was wasting their time. That last claim almost made me laugh out loud. Their time? That was rich. But then, during one of these calls, something slipped. "Yes, sir, this line is recorded," an agent said smugly, trying to intimidate me. Recorded. The word hit me like a lightning strike. If they admitted to recording, that meant evidence existed, evidence of their scam, not just my retaliation. Suddenly, the balance of power tilted even further my way. "Good," I said, my voice calm, steady, almost gleeful. "Make sure you save every second. I want your boss to hear it." The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. I'd landed a punch they didn't expect. And that's when my plan escalated. I kept dialing, kept chanting supervisor like a broken record, weaving in songs, insults, mockery, anything to wear them down. I imagined the chaos on their end. Agents throwing headsets down, voices rising in frustration, managers scrambling to regain control. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about exposure. If I could force a manager to speak to me, I could shove their own scam back in their faces and dare them to admit what they were doing. Call 82. Call 94. By this point, I'd burned through nearly 2 full power banks. My apartment was dark except for the glow of my phone, and I felt like some deranged conductor orchestrating a symphony of chaos one call at a time. Then, finally, on the 116th attempt, it happened. A new voice answered. Not nasal, not rushed, not one of the tired, broken foot soldiers I'd been tormenting all day. This one was thicker, deeper, laced with authority and barely restrained anger. "You will stop calling here," he barked, "or we file harassment case. You understand?" I froze, the air buzzing in my ears. For the first time all day, I felt a flicker of nerves. This wasn't just some underpaid script reader anymore. This was the man pulling the strings. And he had just threatened me. A slow smile spread across my face as the adrenaline surged. Because what he didn't realize was that his threat had just handed me my favorite weapon yet. This went so much deeper than I thought. For a moment, his words echoed in my head. Harassment case. The rational part of me hesitated. Was I pushing too far? Could they actually twist this around on me? The idea of legal trouble flared up like a warning light on a dashboard, sudden and insistent. I paced my apartment, phone still warm in my hand. My pulse hadn't slowed since the first call, and now it beat harder, faster. Was I being reckless? But then I remembered the basics. My number was on the National Do Not Call registry. They'd called me first, not once but dozens of times, ignoring every polite request to stop. If anyone was violating laws, it wasn't me, it was them. I stopped pacing and laughed under my breath. Harassment case? Against me? That would be the dumbest cell phone in scammer history. I pictured the scene. A supervisor trying to explain to the police that he'd been harassed by someone who kept calling him back after being spammed in the first place. The absurdity alone made me grin. Still, part of me wrestled with the risk. Was it worth it? Shouldn't I just quit while I was ahead, satisfied with the chaos I'd already caused? But the thought of quitting left a sour taste. I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. They'd stolen my rest, wasted my time, disrespected every request I'd made. If I stopped now, I'd only confirm what they believed, that victims give up when pushed hard enough. No, I wanted to prove them wrong. I grabbed one of my external power banks and plugged my phone in. The green light blinked, promising hours more battery life. I stared at it like a soldier inspecting a weapon before battle. I wasn't going to stop. Not until I'd carved the message into their skulls. You don't mess with me. I thought about my friends in law enforcement, guys who'd laugh if they heard this story. I could already imagine the knuckle bump and the casual. Good job wasting their time, man. That vision hardened my resolve. So I sat back down, set the phone on speaker, and redialed. My voice was calm, even playful now. The fear washed away. Oh, so you're the supervisor? Perfect. I was hoping to talk to you. The man's response was a low growl. You stop now, or you regret. We make report. I chuckled. Please. I encourage you to. Go ahead, call the police. You'll have to explain how your team has been scamming people all day, and how I just happened to be the one guy who fought back. Can't wait to hear you try. The line went silent for a beat. I could almost feel the tension bleeding through the connection. And in that silence, I realized something important. The balance had shifted. They weren't in control anymore. I was. I spent sleepless nights planning. Finally, I knew what I had to do. The supervisor didn't back down right away. His voice, thick with anger, came back through the line. You call again, we report you. You go to jail. You understand. For a split second, my chest tightened. The threat carried weight, even if hollow. I imagined handcuffs, a courtroom, me explaining to a judge why I'd dialed the same number 100 times. The image was absurd, but still, it flickered across my mind like a warning. But then I couldn't help myself. I laughed. A full, sharp laugh that cracked through the tension. You want to report me? Fantastic. Let's walk through what happens. You call the police, you tell them you're a scammer running a fake insurance scheme, and that your victim wouldn't stop calling you back. You really think that ends with me in jail? Silence. The kind that buzzes with humiliation. I pressed harder. You know what happens if you do that? You don't just lose. You get investigated. You get shut down. And I get to sleep soundly at night knowing I made the call that ended your little operation. The silence stretched long, and I felt a rush of triumph. For the first time, it seemed like I'd cornered them completely. Finally, he muttered something in Hindi. Too fast for me to understand, but the venom in his tone told me everything. He was furious. Then came the pivot. Fine. No more calls. We take your number out. I leaned back in my chair, heart still pounding, but with a wave of relief starting to wash over me. Was that it? Did I win? For the first time all day, the possibility of peace dangled in front of me. I imagined sleeping through the afternoon without interruption, no buzzing phone dragging me awake, no scams cluttering my call log. But the cautious part of me knew better. Scammers lie as easily as they breathe. One promise didn't mean I was safe. Still, I let him think he'd calm me down. Good, I said, my tone steady. See that you do? Because if I get even one more call, this little game starts all over again. He huffed, muttered something else, and hung up. For a moment, I stared at the silent phone, the line dead. My room was quiet again, almost unnervingly so after hours of chaos. I sat there, caught between relief and suspicion. Could it really be over? I stretched, grabbed a drink, and tried to let my body relax. The adrenaline was still humming in my veins, but exhaustion pressed down like a heavy blanket. Maybe I'd finally broken them. Maybe this was the victory I'd been clawing toward all day. I slid back into bed, the quiet of the room feeling like a gift. My eyelids began to droop, and for the first time in hours, sleep seemed possible. But deep inside, a whisper wouldn't shut up. This isn't finished. Not yet. I thought it was over. I couldn't have been more wrong. I should have known better than to believe a scammer's promise. For an hour, the quiet held, and I let myself drift into that fragile space between relief and exhaustion. But then my phone buzzed again. Different number. Same pitch. I sat up in bed, blood boiling faster than caffeine ever could. All the relief I'd allowed myself curdled into fury. They thought they could brush me off with empty words, then slide right back into their scam? No, not this time. I snatched up my phone and hit redial without hesitation. The agent barely got his greeting out before I cut him off. My tone was razor sharp now. Put me through to your supervisor. Right now. Click. I called back. Same demand. Click. Again and again. Every hang-up fueled me further. My fingers moved on instinct. Redial, 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 until my phone was practically an extension of my anger. Somewhere around the 20th attempt, I could hear it in their voices, the cracks widening, the irritation bleeding through. One agent muttered something bitter before cutting me off. Another just sighed, a long, exhausted exhale, before dropping the call. And then, finally, the supervisor came back on the line. You don't stop, he snarled. I warned you. I file report. You regret. This time, I didn't laugh. I leaned into the silence between us, letting my words drop like stones into water. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I told him about the do not call registry, about my friends in law enforcement who'd have a field day hearing how scammers were threatening to report their own victim. I painted the picture of him trying to explain to investigators why his operation was bombarding a registered number, why a single angry man had dozens of call logs to prove it. And then I twisted the knife further. See, the difference between you and me is that I've got nothing to lose. I've got insomnia, a full battery, and 4 industrial-grade power banks. I can keep this up all night, all week if I have to. Every second you spend talking to me is a second you can't scam someone else. So by all means, keep testing me. The silence on the other end wasn't just heavy, it was suffocating. I could practically feel the supervisor grinding his teeth, weighing his options. He wasn't in control anymore. I was. Finally, he cracked. His voice came back, quieter now, but sharp with bitterness. Fine. Your number, deleted. No more calls. I didn't let him off easy. See that you mean it. Because the moment my phone rings with your nonsense again, I'll make sure you understand what hell really feels like. I hung up before he could answer, the satisfaction buzzing through me like electricity. For the first time, I believed him. But as I stared at my phone, thumb hovering over the screen, another thought crept in. What if tomorrow, it starts all over again? What happened next made me question everything. The next morning, I woke up in a haze. My phone was silent on the nightstand, screen dark, no missed calls. For a moment, the quiet felt alien, like stepping into a house after a storm and realizing the walls are still standing. But my mind didn't trust it. I sat there, staring at the phone, waiting for the buzz. Every second of silence felt like the calm before an explosion. After hours of confrontation, my body didn't know how to stand down. My hands twitched as if they expected the vibration at any moment. And underneath it all was the question gnawing at me. Had I pushed too far? Sure, I'd flipped the script on them. I'd taken their game and twisted it until they begged off. But what if they weren't finished? What if they reported me to my carrier? What if they sold my number to another scam group just for revenge? The paranoia crept in, slow but steady. I imagined a future where my phone never stopped buzzing, where I was trapped in an endless war against faceless voices. My insomnia didn't help. I paced the apartment, curtains drawn, replaying every word I'd thrown at that supervisor. The threats, the mockery, the promises that I'd never quit. What if he took that as a challenge? At one point, I caught myself laughing out loud, an ugly, sharp laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here I was, a night shift cleaner with a beat-up phone and a stack of power banks, locked in a battle of willpower with an overseas scam empire. Who does that? Who takes it this far? I rubbed my eyes, exhaustion clawing at me. Maybe I should have stopped after the first dozen calls. Maybe I should have been content with rattling their cages instead of burning down the whole damn aviary. But then I thought about the victims. The people they preyed on every day, elderly, distracted, vulnerable. People who didn't fight back, who didn't even realize they'd been taken until the money was gone. And I knew I couldn't regret what I'd done. Not really. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I hadn't won yet. Every time my phone buzzed with a notification, an email, a random app ping, I jumped. My body braced for the familiar pitch. Hello, sir. We're calling about your insurance. But it never came. Hours turned into a full day. Then 2. My call log remained stubbornly empty. No scams. No fake numbers. Just silence. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollow, like a soldier standing on a battlefield after the fighting ends, unsure whether the enemy has surrendered or is just regrouping for the next strike. As I lay in bed that second night, staring at the ceiling, the quiet pressed in like a weight. I realized the war might finally be over. But if it wasn't, I knew exactly what I had to do to end it once and for all. By the third day, the silence had stretched so long it almost felt like victory. No calls, no interruptions, just the dull hum of my apartment and the rare luxury of uninterrupted sleep. But my mind wouldn't let go. What if they were waiting me out? What if tomorrow they flipped the switch and flooded me with calls again, just to remind me they could? The thought burrowed under my skin until I couldn't sit still. I wasn't content with silence. I needed closure. So I made the final call myself. When the line connected, I braced for the familiar voice. Instead, I got him, the supervisor. His tone was sharp, already dripping with venom. Why you call again? I told you stop. Perfect. Because I wanted to make this clear, I said, steady and deliberate. You even think about calling my number again, you'll regret it more than you already do. He scoffed, but I didn't give him space. I rolled forward, each word cutting clean. I've got time. I've got power banks. I've got insomnia. I can keep this up until your whole operation collapses under the weight of wasted hours. You scam people who can't fight back. Congratulations. But you picked the wrong guy this time. Because I will fight back. And I don't get tired. He tried to interrupt, sputtering curses, but I spoke over him. You said your calls are recorded, right? Good. Record this. If one more ring from your group touches my phone, I will dedicate every sleepless night to making sure you and your team know what harassment really feels like. I'll be the nightmare you can't mute, the ringtone you can't escape. The silence on his end was heavy. Then came a hiss of frustration, low and vicious. Fine. No more calls. You hear me? Finished. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. That's the smartest thing you've said all week. Before hanging up, I left him one last nail in the coffin. I hope you understand something. You don't control me. I control you. And if I hear from you again, I'll remind you of that every hour, every day, until you break. Do we understand each other? He spat one last curse in Hindi, then cut the line. I set the phone down slowly, my heart pounding, my body vibrating with adrenaline. That was it. The final blow. 3 days later, my phone was still silent. No fake insurance calls. No spoofed numbers. Just peace. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of exhaustion finally slipping off my shoulders. Against an entire scam operation, I hadn't just survived, I'd won. And as I stared at my quiet phone, I knew one thing with certainty. They would never forget the day they chose the wrong insomniac to mess with. The silence stretched on, not just for hours or days, but for weeks. My phone, once hijacked by an endless parade of spoofed numbers, stayed quiet. No buzz at noon to jolt me out of sleep. No robotic greetings about coverage or policy options. Just the steady rhythm of normal life returning. It was almost eerie at first. I'd grown so used to the constant barrage that its absence felt unnatural, like waiting for a storm that never came. Every time my phone vibrated, for a real text, an actual email, a legitimate notification, I braced myself, expecting the worst. And every time, it wasn't them. That's when I knew I'd broken them. The realization hit me in waves. First came relief. I could finally collapse into bed after my night shifts and drift into real, uninterrupted sleep. No more snapping awake, heart racing, because my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. My days belonged to me again. Then came satisfaction. I hadn't just stopped the calls, I'd flipped the script entirely. For once, the scam artists were the ones wasting their breath, their patience, their sanity. They had to listen to my songs, my sarcasm, my relentless barrage of redials. They were the ones muttering curses, slamming headsets, begging to be free. And finally, came reflection. I thought about the people they usually targeted. The elderly, the distracted, the trusting. People who didn't have the time or the stubbornness to fight back. People who lost money, sometimes thousands, to schemes like these. For them, the phone wasn't a weapon, it was a trap. And that's when it really sank in. What I'd done wasn't just about petty revenge. It was about balance. They'd chosen me by mistake, thinking I was another easy mark. Instead, they got someone with nothing but time, insomnia, and a stubborn streak sharp enough to cut them down to size. I won't pretend I saved the world. Their call center probably kept running, probably moved on to the next batch of numbers, the next vulnerable target. But I know one thing. They'll think twice before dialing mine again. And maybe, just maybe, I gave them a taste of their own medicine strong enough to sting. Sometimes justice doesn't come from courts or cops. Sometimes it comes from the simple act of refusing to be a victim and making sure the people who tried to exploit you regret ever trying. So when people ask me if it was worth it, if 116 calls, drained power banks, and hours of my time was too much, I just smile. Because I haven't heard from them since. And every night when I turn my phone face down, knowing it won't jolt me awake with another scam pitch, I sleep easier. For me, that silence is victory. And for them, that silence is the sound of defeat. You know, looking back on it now, I realize this wasn't just about scam calls or sleepless nights. It was about control. They thought they had all of it, that they could barge into my life, steal my time, and maybe even my money if I'd been less alert. But the truth is, the moment I stopped playing by their rules, everything flipped. That's why I'm sharing this story. Because I know a lot of you out there have dealt with the same thing. The calls that never stop, the scripts that sound too polished, the empty promises that they'll take you off the list. It's exhausting, and it makes you feel powerless. But maybe my story shows you something different, that sometimes you can fight back. You can turn the tables, even if it's just by wasting their time so they can't waste someone else's. If you've ever dealt with scams, let me know in the comments. What did you do? Did you ignore them? Or did you fight back? And hey, if you like this story, stick around. Subscribe, share it with a friend, and let's keep exposing the tricks these people pull.